On the phone, we have one of the newest members into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, former Kansas City Chief and Nebraska Cornhusker, Will Shields. Will, it's been a long time coming. A guy who made the Pro Bowl 12 times, you think he'd go in on his first time as a Hall of Fame candidate?
Well, everybody's got to wait their turn. I think there's a lot of great guys out there that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. And even right now, you sort of look at it and go, yeah, I'm glad I'm in. But there's a lot of guys that's been waiting on that list for quite a while.
And that list doesn't get any shorter over time. It's like, okay, well,
exactly.
I didn't get in this year, and then there's, here's a dozen more guys that are worthy of the Hall of Fame, and where do I fit in on all that?
And that's where it sort of gets you. It makes it tough because you're going, hey, I put up pretty good numbers, but really, for me, I wasn't looking to get into the Hall of Fame when you first started it. You just say you have Hall of Fame credentials. And then from that point is when you start going, I did play pretty good back in the day. I do have pretty good credentials, Then you start looking at it like, yeah, it would be cool to go into the Hall of Fame and, those kind of things. But when you're playing, you're just looking at it the day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month of going, man, my body's sore. I got to work to get ready for the next week and things of that nature.
How did you end up choosing Nebraska for your college?
Well, I had a couple colleges that were looking at me. I actually had a hard time qualifying with the ACT. So I had, different schools that sort of dropped out here and there. And, finally, an old coach from OU told me that, hey, I can use a combination of scores to actually get qualified. Because, big tests is not my big forte. And basically I qualified, and, there's like 4 or 5 schools left. And out of the schools, regardless of what it was, Nebraska was always at the top, one of the top of the list as far as where I wanted to go to school or what was going to be a best fit for me.
Now, you can't tell me that Oklahoma had tougher academic regulations to get into Nebraska.
It didn't matter. They all had the same regulations. It was just across the board of what you had to get in. And, that was part of the process of trying to make sure you could get in. Not saying teams dropped off because of that. I mean, I was always close enough that they knew I could get there. But, they sort of saw me as being a kid that maybe wouldn't travel away from the Midwest or, maybe wasn't as talented as some of the guys that they were looking for to go to the different coasts or things like that. So it was good because it was, it fit for what I wanted to do and how I played the game.
Did Tom Osborne personally recruit you, or were the assistant coaches the main guys?
Assistant coaches. Coach Young and Coach Tinniper were the two that recruited me. Coach Young came down, spent some time, talked to me about different things, and then Coach Tinniper came down and talked a little bit, and then Coach Osborne came down, of course, in that last visit to talk. But the thing that was really unique for me is that they were already ahead of the game as far as the academic piece of it, and that was very important, with a guy that was already, felt like he was struggling a little bit to get started, but to know that they already had academic support in place that would, sort of help you get to where you needed to be, but also, you didn't have to be there all by yourself.
Nebraska didn't tell you about all the Outland Trophy winners they'd produced and things like that?
Well, you look at it and say, they had a couple, when I showed up, and there's been a couple since I've left, but really it was more or less because I knew I was going to end up playing offensive line, and if I would have went to a couple of different schools, I might have played defensive line. So, it was sort of the best option for me. I already knew the offense, so that, gave me a leg up of, of what I wanted to do because, we put it in 2 years before in our junior year. So it wasn't that hard of a transition, or wouldn't be as hard of a transition than going somewhere new, starting over, basically learning things from scratch. There's a familiarity with, how the coaching staff worked and those kind of things, and they were similar to the coaching staff I had in high school.
You never had to learn how to pass block in college because you guys ran, 90% of the time?
Yes, sir. Loved every minute of it. That also makes your life a little easier, too.
Yeah. Did you enjoy defensive line more than offense, or?
I like both. The whole thing about it is I like both. And the thing that, I really like is that, you can do both. So my first year in the league, I actually spent, well, I shouldn't say the whole year, but all preseason, I was doing pass rushing things and playing on the defensive line during scout teams and things like that. And after practice, a guy that hurt his knee, I was trying to rehab him, get him back in shape. So they had me working on pass rushing and things of that nature, maybe give me an opportunity to play on the other side of the ball.
But that gives you, when you end up playing offense, it gives you a better idea of what the defense is trying to do and what you as an offensive lineman, what your job entails, I would think.
Yeah, it works out really well. And for me, it was the simple fact that, I played defense, my whole life or both sides of the line. So I always knew what was sort of coming. So it helped me, sort of curtail what I wanted to do or how I wanted to do certain things when I was on the other side of the ball. I wanted to play with a defensive mentality, but I had to do it under control. So that's sort of how you develop how you're going to play the game.
What was Coach Osborne like to play for?
Coach Osborne was a lot of fun to play for, but the thing of it is, most people realize that Coach Osborne let his coaches coach. And so you really developed a relationship with the coaching staff as it was. So, Coach Osborne, he never really sat down and went through the X's and O's and all that stuff with you. He went and had his own meetings and they talked about it. Then his coaches came back and implemented everything that wanted to be implemented. So, it's more of a relationship between all the coaches in itself and not just, Coach Osborne, even though he is the leader of the group.
Now, Nebraska's known for bringing in talent from out of state, but usually that's skill position players. Was your adjustment from Lawton to Lincoln, Nebraska easy, difficult?
It was fairly easy because, at home I was sort of a homebody, so it made it easy to be at homebody, on the college campus. There's always some growing pains here and there, just, getting used to being away for a little bit, that kind of stuff. But nothing really difficult. The simple fact of it is that you saw your team as your family and your friends were always part of that group. So, it's like just the next part of bonding.
What was your biggest game in college, you think?
I have no idea. I don't know what would have been my biggest game in college. I'm not really sure. I mean, basically I played a lot when I was a freshman, but for the last 3 years, I think I played in every game but one. So, it's hard to just pick out one game compared to another.
Okay. Was there one game that was more fun than the rest of them?
I think I had fun every time I played. That's the one thing I like about, for playing the game is that the love of sport is that, every time I touched the field, it was fun. I mean, it was a competition. It was the actual fact of, you get a chance to go out and compete and play a game that you've played since you were little.
Did you realize that you were going to get drafted by the Chiefs, or did you have no clue where you were going to go in the 80 or 93 draft?
Yeah, no, I had no idea. You're always one of those kids that, even though they projected you to go in the third round, you're hoping that you might slip in that first or second round, that somebody would give you an opportunity before they actually said you were going to go. At one point you're thinking about it as, you're the Allen Trophy winner, so you should be able to go in the first 2 rounds because you won a prestigious award or what have you. But, that's not necessarily the case. And you learn that fairly quickly when you talk to, different scouts and different agents and different things of that nature. But it's also a great learning curve of, it's not where you go in the draft, it's what you do after you get drafted. And that's all it is getting that opportunity to get your foot in the door and make sure that nobody's ever going to get you out of it.
Yeah. Now, I look at that 93 draft, and no guards were drafted until the third round, and you were the number 3 guard in that round. But I also look and see who the top 2 players were quarterbacks Drew Bledsoe and Rick Meyer. So,
yeah,
Even when these NFL geniuses make their selections, not always correct. There were some good players drafted ahead of you and some good players drafted behind you. But
Yeah.
it's just, okay, let me get into training camp and show you what I can do. Is that pretty much the mindset you took?
Well, I think it's more or less is when you got the simple fact that you got skipped for 2 rounds, and then you got an opportunity to go in and prove, try to prove what you can do. You look at it as if now it's time to move on to provide for your family for one, but also you got to look at it as a true job. Now this is your career. This is what you're going to try to make into a career, and not just a flash in the pan that's there for a year or two, or that guy that goes, hey, I remember that guy. Whatever happened to him? You want to be a guy that makes into a career. So it's good I had good coaches when I first came in. They sort of set the tone of what it was going to be like to be a pro, and I had great players like Joe Montana and Marcus Allen, and I got a chance to sit and watch them prepare and to see how they did things and go, you know what, I want to be like those guys. I want to be, the guys I emulated and watched. I want to be able to say, hey, I had a good career. And, I had a coach that actually brought that up, one of the first meetings we were ever in. If you can make this a true career, that means you've done something right. So, from that point forward, you're always looking for that next group, that next goal, that next rung, so that you can keep performing better and better on a higher level.
What was Montana like in the huddle?
Huh?
What was Joe Montana like in the huddle?
Very cool and relaxed. I mean, that was one thing about him. You never knew if he was rattled or if anything bothered him or anything like that. He was the same regardless if you were, down by 21 or up by 21. He'd walk in the huddle, and if he, hey, I saw this, and this, all he'd just say is, give me a little more time. And that's when you knew he saw something the last play that he was going to make something happen. Just give me a little more time and he can make things happen. And that's what you like about having guys that understand the game from inside out, because, they see certain things and they'll be able to say, you know what, give me 2 more seconds and I know this guy will beat that guy and we'll make it happen.
How long into training camp was it before you knew you could play at that level and the coaches recognized that you could play at the NFL level?
Well, it wasn't until right before we went into training camp. We had a couple of mini camps, and my first mini camp was terrible. I had no idea what I was doing. I was sort of lost trying to catch up. The game was so fast at that point in my eyes, and I was trying to figure out what was, how could I get better? And then one of my agents came out, and we actually played one-on-one basketball, and he sort of explained to me, he was like, you're making this way too complicated. And I said, well, what do you mean? He was like, well, look at this. That's the goal. The goal is the quarterback, and you're going to keep me away from him. Just like you play basketball, you're going to play football. And he just sort of made it simple, and I said, oh, is that how easy it is? It's not, complicated. I don't have to stay perfect and do this and do that. He was like, nope. And then show up to the next camp, showed some flashes, and, the coach, started giving me some tips and different things to work on when I went home. And, at that point, I was like, you know what? I think I can do pretty well in this league if I just can keep moving forward and keep working on what I need to do to get better.
Which lineman gave you the toughest time competing against?
Actually, John Randall was tough. He gave me fits all the time. And then Trevor Price. Trevor's rookie year, the coach we had that says, I hope nobody teaches that kid how to pass rush, because he's going to be something special. And, of course, lo and behold, guess who ends up leaving? My old line coach ends up leaving and going to Denver and teaching this kid how to pass rush. So, it's one of those things of, he could tell guys what they could do just by seeing them on film. And it's just amazing how, guys got better as, you saw it as it was moving on as you were working your way year by year.
John Randall told Elliott and I that one of the keys to his success was he talked trash, but not just about the player. He knew about their family members, girlfriends, where they went to school. He got in their heads, so they weren't even thinking about football when they were playing against him. Did he do that to you?
Well, he tried, but I had enough problems with him physically without even worrying about the mental part. I really didn't care what he was saying or what he was doing. I was more or less worried about the other parts of it, the physical pieces of it. There's parts of the game where he's going, "Oh, you're not going to talk to me now, huh? You're not going to be my friend. You're not going to do this, that, and the other." And I just looked at him like he was crazy. But John is a great guy. I mean, what's really cool is you hate playing against him, but off the field, and talking to him, and we actually got to spend some time together, after a couple of Pro Bowls, and he is an awesome guy to be around.
Does he still talk trash or not as much?
Of course, he still talks trash. Why wouldn't he?
I know if on the golf course, if you're golfing, he's sitting there trying to talk trash while you're over a putt or teeing up a drive.
Of course, and he's very competitive about golf too, is what I hear. I've never got a chance to play with him because I'm not that caliber yet, but I've heard he's very, very competitive when it comes to golf.
Now, when you broke in, Marty Schottenheimer was the coach. Was there much interaction between you and him?
Not a lot. I mean, we had a couple of meetings here and there, that kind of thing, but we really didn't have, I guess a relationship. Marty's a defensive coach, so he was very tied into his defensive players and things like that. I mean, we got along fine, we talked fine, but, closeness, I guess, we're good, we get along and all that good stuff, but, ended up becoming closer with a couple of other coaches and that kind of thing.
Which coach do you think was the key to your success?
I had a lot of coaches that was key to my success. I mean, if you go back to high school, I had Coach Madden and Coach Breeze. If I go to college, I had Coach Young and Coach Jennifer. And then in pros, Coach Alex Gibbs was my first coach, and he basically sort of set the tone for what my career could be. And in doing that, he really, set the tone in my mindset of what I could do.
What was the key to being a successful lineman?
I think it's constantly working on your game. I think, you've got to work on different things and also learning what everyone else is doing. And that really helps.
Is it a matter of somebody pushing you or you pushing yourself or a combination of that?
Well, you need to push yourself. I mean, you've always got to be not your worst detriment, but your worst critic, so that you're always working to get better. If you can see where your downfalls are before somebody else does, that's always a better thing than, always waiting for someone else to tell you what you're not doing right. And then from that point, being open enough to take other people's criticism and use it to make yourself better.
I see that you won the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. You also won the Outland. Is there an award you won that stood out as your most prestigious or favorite award?
I don't think I have one favorite. I mean, the Walter Payton Man of the Year is, one of those accolades that's very, I should say it's a great community-based outreach piece, because community really helped you get it. It wasn't you individually. It was the community that helped you build your programs and be a part of your programs, because without their support, you couldn't have gotten anything done that, not anyone else could do, but their support really helped you. And then also the Walter Camp Man of the Year award. Those two really sort of solidifies what your foundation is for, of what you did off the field, not necessarily just on the field.
When you blocked for the Chiefs, you had some pretty good running backs. You had Marcus Allen, Priest Holmes, Larry Johnson. Was there a favorite you had blocking for, and was there a difference in how you as a lineman had to perform to block for them?
Well, there is. I mean, of course, Priest was fun to block for, because I think that was one of the most prolific offenses that we had a chance to put together. That was when offense was fun. I mean, and also when we had Joe Montana and Marcus Allen, that was a fun offense to be in. Just because the simple fact of it is that you're pushing the ball down the field, you're putting points on the board. You know, all those things are always part of it. When your offense struggles, those are not the most fun parts to be in because it's the grind. But, you know, those were all different parts of your life, the beginning and then, of course, close to the end of where you had a blast.
How did you never miss a game in 14 years?
Luck. Luck is one of those keys to it, but I had a great staff around me. Great chiropractor, Dr. Mladenoff. Man, that guy would actually try some things that would get my body back on track, where I never thought, you know, like one week I don't think I'm going to play, and he'd figure some things out. And with that, with the staff, that training staff they had at the Chiefs on top of that, I mean, it was amazing some of the things that they could do to get you to be able to perform that next week.
Yeah. Not missing a game doesn't mean you weren't hurt, because I think just about everybody that plays in the NFL plays hurt to a certain degree. Is there a threshold of pain that says, okay, I can do this? Or do you have to put it out of your mind?
There's a threshold of pain of, you know, of what you can and can't do, but it's also recovery time, being able to recover enough to say, okay, I can push through it. You know, I can get through it one way or another. And then there's another point of, you know, I'm going to be a detriment to the team because I can't get, you know, to do what I needed to do to help the team. And that's, you know, that's the key. You know, there's a difference between being hurt and being injured. And if you're just hurting, you push your way through. If you're injured, you need to sit down and let somebody else that's going to play and perform at a higher level.
How hard is it not to be a member of a Super Bowl winning team and a player?
Well, it's pretty easy because, you know, we never did it. But, you know, seriously, though, it's, you know, the thing is that there's only one winner. There's only been 49 Super Bowls, and some have more than others. Closest we ever got was a championship game, and that was my rookie year. And, you know, some teams are just destined for greatness. We just never could get over the hump of where we wanted to be.
When Dick Vermeil was coaching to the Chiefs, did he ever bring up talk at the Super Bowl as a guy who'd been there before?
Oh, every year. I mean, that's your goal in mind. Even years that, you know, the couple of years that we were 6-10, you know, we started off the year, hey, we want to be in the Super Bowl. We want to be in contention. And the way it comes down is, you know, getting the lightning to strike at the right time. And that would be, you know, when you get to that point of, you know, playoff time and everything's starting to click, that's when you know you can make that run. And sometimes you get into the false sense of, hey, we've arrived, and then you exhale, and then when you exhale, you get hit in the mouth. And so that's the hard part about it. You know, you don't try to keep your team to where they don't exhale. And some people just understand how to get their teams ready when it comes playoff time.
How hard was it when the Chiefs lost Derek Thomas?
It was hard. I mean, you think about it, you know, he was a key player to what we were trying to do and what we were trying to accomplish. And, you know, we had a future built around him and what he did as far as a player. And when you lose him as a player and a friend, it makes it tough. I mean, the simple fact that, you know, that guy was in the locker room with you and, you know, showed up to your events, charity events and things of that nature, and now he's gone, you know, it leaves a void.
As a coach, what was Herm Edwards like? Was he shouting all the time, or what?
No, he doesn't shout on coaching, but he does. You know, he likes to talk, as you can tell. Very boisterous in a sense. You knew when he was coming down the hallway, but you know, it was really interesting because when I first met Herm, he was really quiet because he was here when I was a rookie. And he was a DB coach at that point. Didn't say a whole lot. And then for him to come around full circle and be a head coach, you know, it was different. I mean, he does, you know, he's a very nice guy. He does a great job some players like him. Some players are not sure how to take him. You know, I'm one of those guys that's in between. I like him. He's a great guy, you know, and it's just, you know, part of fitting the right scheme and the right people in the right place.
How did you know when it was time to call it a career? Because, I mean, you were still a Pro Bowl player when you retired.
Well, I knew it was time to quit when they said they were going young, and I was sore every week and, you know, fighting to get back, you know, every week to get up. Hey, I'm going to play again next week. We're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing that. And then we make it in the playoffs, which, you know, I think that was the rough year of playoff time because we had, 7 or 8 things happen for us to get in the playoffs. Now, of course, we won our game, but we had to have 6 other teams lose, win, tie, or whatever to get in. And, you know, that was also the year that, Willie didn't come back. So that was, you know, one of those tough years that we fought through. And then when they go, hey, we're going to get young, and I was like, yeah, it's time for me to move on. My knees hurt, my back hurt, but for me to keep fighting, you know, for a battle, and we're not looking for a championship, we're looking to go young again. I really didn't have that time on my body to keep fighting that, you know, that old thing called age.
After you retired and it's Sunday, do you say to yourself, you know, if I just had to play on Sunday, I could still do it?
You know, maybe that was 5 years ago, 4 years ago, something like that. But, you know, being, you know, now that I'm 9 years removed, which is crazy to think about it, you know, 7, 8, 9 years removed, you know, you always think, hey, I got one good play in me, that kind of thing. As long as you can still, you know, walk, talk, and move, you got that one good play in you. And that's just sort of your mentality that you have, that's what kept you playing as long as you played. That's what kept you being the person that you are, is the competitive nature of it. You know, somebody asked me, actually Charles Haley asked me the other day, or somebody asked me, hey, Will, do you think you could block Charles Haley? Do you think you'd want to face him? I was like, you know what? I'd face him any day he wanted to. I said, that would be fun. Not saying I'd win, lose, or whatever, but I'm not afraid to step to the line with anybody.
What do you think of this new Hall of Fame procedure where they have the finalists wait in a hotel room and then you wait for the president of the Hall of Fame to come in the room and knock on the door and let you know you're in? I think it's kind of unfair to these players because, I mean, all the pressure's on you, and if you don't get in, I think it's a huge disappointment.
Well, it's better than what it used to be, and I don't know if anybody know what it used to be, being able to go through it four years in a row. I know what it was like before they had the show and start having you where you can walk out and, you know, at least know that you made it. It used to be where if they didn't call you, you weren't in. And you could be anywhere. You could actually be at the Super Bowl. You could be at home. You could be whatever. They didn't even call you and let you know you were in. You find out on the internet. So for them to at least acknowledge you and bring you out and say, hey, you're part of the final list, that's a start. You know, that's better than not knowing at all and someone else tell you via, you know, email or phone call or something, oh, by the way, you didn't make it. At least you know at that point. Now, it was rough the first year they did it, which was last year, I believe they actually did the first show. And
right.
Being part of that group, you're on the same floor and you're listening to them knock. And you're going, okay, he's knocking on the other door over there. This guy comes out and he's screaming, yeah, I'm in. And then you get the same knock on your door. You're going, hey, this might be. And then if somebody else is not the guy that's actually running the thing, and you go, sorry, you didn't make it in this year. But at least you know. And you have an opportunity to go to the show and, you know, that kind of thing. At least you know how it goes and everything else. And now you know more about the process, which, you know, takes you a couple of years to learn, that you need, 80% to get in. So you could be on the final ballot and still not get in because you need 80%. And it's a tough crowd in there because everybody's pulling for their guys to get in for sure. And then the second, third, and fourth spot, you know, are always held up. So it's 4 to 8 or 4 to 10. And till this year, I just now learned all the little nuances that go on. And so you can only imagine what it would be if you're, you know, not knowing anything and you're just going, well, I should be in because I was a good player. But it still comes down to there's a lot of good players out there that played great football that needs the opportunity to be able to declarate that they are great athletes.
So after you find out that you're not in, what do you do? Do you pack up your bags and go home? Do you go out to dinner? Do you stay for the Super Bowl?
No, you walk over to the show and you sit and, watch the show and that kind of stuff. And then they introduce the guys out that are in the Hall of Fame. And then from there, you can either, go back to your room, go eat dinner, or, whatever you want to do that night. And then you can either, opt to fly, if you already have your flights booked, that's one thing. But if you don't, then you have to get your flight made if you're going to fly home and not go to the Super Bowl, or if you're going to watch the Super Bowl from there and fly out the next day. They pretty much have it set up to where, you're set up to fly out the day after the Super Bowl unless you get in. If you get in, then you actually have to stay that whole day and go through the process of learning how everything is going to work.
So there was no temptation to pull a Kanye West and run up on the stage and say, "This should be me"?
No. The great thing about, I guess, I don't know if anybody's going to do it. Now that you gave them the idea, they might think about it. But, the whole thing is, if you look up on stage and go, well, this guy should be in, that guy shouldn't be in, why should this guy be in? It's really tough because I'm sitting in a seat where Tim Brown is sitting in front of me the year before. And Charles Haley is sitting 2 seats in front of me. And I'm going, this guy's been waiting 7 years. This guy's been waiting 9 or 10 years. What gives me the right to be in front of anyone else? And I've been here 2, 3, or 4 years. So it's the respect of all the other guys that have come before you and have done things. And it also gives you that confusing piece of going, how did this guy not get in if he has this, this, and this? Or maybe these are not the criteria, or what's this or what's that. So you start questioning, what is and what isn't, when it really comes down to, sometimes it's luck, sometimes it's fortunate, sometimes you're unfortunate. You just sort of roll with the punches, and that's sort of the life of being an NFL player, especially the life of being an offensive lineman, because we don't have those stats. We don't have those other criteria that can be vaunted as being, well, you played in 95% of the snaps of the Chiefs over 14 years. I'm just throwing it out there.
Right.
Not saying it's me. I'm just saying, you don't have all those stats and things that to back up that you were a good athlete. You just went out and played and did your job.
But with all the statistics that there are nowadays, baseball's had them for a long time. Basketball has them. Hockey has them. I think at some point, football will have it too, where they'll be able to say, okay, 85, 90% of the time he blocked his man the way he was supposed to. Sort of like the way they go over in the films after the games. But you'll have somebody keeping track of all that, and they'll be able to say, okay, he was the most successful blocker, or he got called for holding, 10% of the time or more or whatever, and they'll be able to do a better job, because nowadays it's, he was a good lineman. Oh yeah, he played a long time. He made a lot of Pro Bowls, and there's not a lot of statistical analysis to say, he was one of the best who ever played the game.
Well, then you're going to go back to the fact of who's going to grade the grader. As they say, guys, he's got 127 tackles. Okay, so if he falls on the pile, does that count as a tackle?
Yeah.
There's always those statistics that can be skewed. Fact is figure, figure is fact is what a coach used to tell us. You can make them fit any way you want to. But it comes down to, the simple fact of, hey, I love the game. I respect the game. And, I am happy and fortunate to be in the Hall of Fame. And, and it's a unique position to be in, especially being an offensive lineman. And I will hopefully honor it and also revel in it at the same time.
Yeah.
Did you decide who's going to present you at the Hall of Fame?
No, me and my wife was going over it again last night. I had my short list, and she's trying to help me and everything else. And then I started, avoiding it a little bit here and there. And then I go back to it. But, hopefully by, this time next week, I'll know who's going to present me. And then, it'll be set.
So you make it into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and the day after, you have to go to class and learn what that means. What do they talk to you about? Did they figure your schedule for the next 6 months or whatever it is?
Well, they do little things. There's part of the scheduling. There's part of the, understanding what happens that the couple days you're up there in Canton, just go through the itinerary, because it's a lot to prepare for, because, you've got everyone you've ever known to a certain degree that's now going, hey, are they going to make the trip to Canton, and who do you invite and who don't you invite? And, there is, that list that you have to put together of, people that are close to you and that kind of thing. And it's not a small task to put together, a big deal like this.
You still work out?
I attempt at working out, yes.
Do you know any good gyms?
Yeah, I got a great gym up here in Kansas City that I train people at. You should know that.
I see 68 Inside Sports. The number 68 must mean something to you.
Yeah, it was the last number I got to wear. That's sort of how that came to fruition. But yeah, we have a training complex up here that works out really well. We train pretty much every sport. We got 115,000 square foot of training, basically, from football, basketball, soccer, and lacrosse. We can do it all, from baby swimming to basically athletic pool aerobics, things of that nature. We do a little bit of everything.
Could you teach an offensive lineman to hold?
And not get called for it.
We don't teach holding. We teach negotiating space.
And how do you teach negotiating space?
Oh, you can teach it in various different ways. There's about 1,000 different ways of teaching negotiating space.
Is there a key to not getting called for holding?
There are some keys to it. I mean, those are different technique things that you use, and it's not necessarily holding if you're taught inside the body frame. That's the rules and regulations. Now, when I first started playing football, you couldn't hold or grab onto anything. You basically had to grab onto your own chest plate and run around with chicken wings trying to block people.
Right.
So you can imagine, how far the game has come along to where now you can at least open palm, hands on chest, as long as your frame is within his body frame, you can go ahead and do what you got to do. But as soon as it comes out, it's sort of like, anything else. Arm extensions, hold on, that kind of stuff. That's holding.
You've been in the Kansas City area for a long time. Do you have a favorite rib place?
I like Hayward's, I like Zarda's, and I like Oklahoma Joe's. I'd say those would be the top three. And there's a new place called The Rub. So, that's the problem with Kansas City. We got about 50 different places you can get barbecue at. It just depends on what day it is.
Okay, I'm older than you by a lot, and back in the day, it was always Arthur Bryant's.
Yep, Arthur Bryant's is still good.
Okay.
That's if you like a dry rib. That works for you.
And in Cincinnati, it's Montgomery Inn. No question about it.
Is it?
Yes, that's the most famous one in Cincinnati. I thought you know that when you play the Bengals.
You know what? We don't go to rib places when we go. We go to actually eat different kinds of food. We can't sit and load up on ribs and plan on going to block people the next day.